Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. This is Zach over at NV Woodworks. So today I'm going to be just kind of walking you through how I stabilize this big chunk of Buckeye Burl. I want to make a hybrid bowl blank, and it's a pretty big piece, so I thought it might be useful to see what I do to stabilize this and give you a couple of thoughts along the way. So let's get started. Alright, so I got a big piece of wood and I want to stabilize it, and so I thought it'd be a good video for you guys. I haven't seen a lot of people stabilize larger pieces of wood, really. I don't know of any videos that have that in it, so I thought it'd be good to just kind of show it. There's nothing spectacular about it. It's going to be the exact same process basically that I use for small chunks. I think the difference for me is I'm going to be having to use one of these bigger pot style vacuum chambers. I usually use the Turntex ones, and frankly I like them a lot better. I like the visibility through the side. You can really see where the air bubbles are coming from, and once the air bubbles are not coming from your wood, you can shut off vacuum, so it makes it kind of nice. Looking from the top in one of these type, you really have no clue where little bubbles are coming from, and a lot of times they could just be bubbles underneath the wood, not actually coming from inside the wood. Now, real quick, you might notice that I have this in a plastic bag. So I just took this out of the oven. I have it fully dried out. It was in the oven for about 3 days. I did the weight test, and it hasn't dropped weight in 24 hours. So it's fully dried out. Now, I'm not going to be using a Turntex chamber, so I have to figure out something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load it into this bucket, fill it with cactus juice, put something heavy on it, and then put it in my big pot. That's the way that I'm going to do it. So there's nothing spectacular about this. All the steps are exactly the same. It doesn't matter what size it is. I just thought you guys might like to see how I do this. Now, one thing I want to stop and mention, you see this is in a plastic bag. I think one thing that people don't realize or don't understand necessarily is you don't want to take your piece of wood out. So I've got this dried to like 0% moisture content, or pretty close to it. Don't take it out of the oven and then just stick it out in your shop for, an hour or two or days. The minute you take it out of the oven, it's going to start absorbing moisture from the environment, and it's going to want to get to equilibrium moisture content with your shop or wherever you're at. So it depends on the humidity in the air where you're at, but even in Nevada, it's pretty arid here, and it's going to start sucking up moisture and get probably somewhere around 8% is equilibrium in my shop, maybe 10. That's way too high for resin casting or for stabilizing. So when you take it out, put it in a bag, let it cool down to the so it's not going to set off the cactus juice immediately. But put it in a bag, and I recommend get it under vacuum, in the cactus juice as soon as it's ready, if you can. You don't want to let it sit for days. It just, if it starts absorbing moisture, you're going to get a less stabilized piece of wood in the end. And if you have to store it long term, there's not very good options. A Ziploc bag is definitely not, airtight. The best thing that you can do if you have to leave it for a few days is to wrap it like 3 or 4 times with saran wrap, and even at that, it's still not really fully airtight. Moisture could get in. So your best option, take it out of the oven, cool down, put it in vacuum, and put it in the cactus juice under vacuum, and you should get the best results that way. So let's get started with this thing. We're going to get it loaded up in the bucket, and we'll pour a ton of cactus juice on top of it, and then we'll get things going here. All right, we got it under vacuum. Everything's running good. I've actually moved the whole setup to where I normally do stabilizing, up at the front of the shop, and then I actually tuck my vacuum pump under the roll-up door so it doesn't buzz in my ear all day. It's outside the shop. So I'll let this probably stay under vacuum for a couple days now. Technically, I think a day would probably be more than enough, but I'm not actually coming to the shop tomorrow. It's my day off, so it's going to run under vacuum for a couple days. It's not going to hurt anything. Then when I come back, we'll shut off the vacuum pump and let it just soak. And I'll probably let it soak for 2 or 3 days, get maximum absorption. Then it's time to bake it. So at this point, there's not a whole lot to do. So we'll come back when I've let it soak for a few days and I'm just about ready to bake it. That's kind of the next important stage, I guess. And I have a couple tips. I'll show you what I do to clean off the top and surface and get it in the oven. So we'll come back in a couple days and finish the process. All right, so it was under vacuum for a couple days. I let it soak for a couple more. I'm pretty sure that burl is saturated, and it's time to bake it and cure the cactus juice in it. Before I put it in the oven, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out, and I am going to thoroughly dry off the outside of this thing. That'll reduce, how much you have to clean up later that's like baked on the outside. I call it like the crusties. If you can get it completely dry, then there's really no cleanup after it's baked. You're just baking in the stuff on the inside. So I always do that. I use paper towels. I let it sit and drip dry for a while. One thing to note about cactus juice, it doesn't evaporate, and once you've done the vacuum step, you could let it sit on your countertop for a month and it's not going to lose cactus juice or weight or anything like that. It doesn't evaporate. Cactus juice is 100% solid, so there's nothing to evaporate. So once you've vacuumed it, atmospheric pressure is holding all that cactus juice on the inside cellular structure of your piece. So you don't have to worry about this. It's not a rush, like take it out of the vacuum chamber and then get it in the oven. You don't have to worry about it. Get that, take the time to get it, dried off on the outside, and you won't have as much to do later after you've baked it. So let's get this out of here, get it cleaned up, and then get it baked. All right, so I let this sit overnight to drip dry, and now we're ready to just dab off any excess that's on there, and then I'm going to toss it in the oven. All right, we got it in the oven. Now it's just a matter of letting it bake, cure, and we'll be ready to cast it. I'm excited. So I'm just going to stop real quick and answer the question, what is that oven that I'm using for stabilizing? And it's made by Blue M. I don't know if the brand matters, but it's a gravity-style lab oven, and I highly recommend if you can get your hands on one of those, snag it, because the temperature doesn't fluctuate wildly like your toaster ovens and even those meat smokers do. They're better built. They're better quality components, less likelihood of it going haywire, and I think they're made to be run for long periods of time. It's kind of a good option for this type of stuff. Problem is they're pretty expensive. So if you can find one used locally, snag it if you see one. But no matter what you're using, I just want to kind of reiterate, when you're stabilizing, when you're drying wood out, and when you're even baking the cactus juice, you're putting wood in an oven. It's dangerous. It's at the upper high end of dangerous stuff that could cause a fire in your shop. So just be aware of that. I know a few people that their shop and or their house included burned down while they were doing this type of thing. And, you know, whether it was the oven's fault or electricity or whatever, it doesn't matter. This is a dangerous thing. Just make sure that you're taking every precaution possible to eliminate or at least minimize fire risk when you're doing this. So having said all that, we'll come back when I get this thing out of the oven and we'll wrap things up. All right, so it's all baked and cured and it's looking pretty good. Now, you might notice I got quite a bit of excess on the outside that I'm gonna have to deal with. And despite my best efforts, I still got some excess on the outside. And I think what the problem was, there are some pretty deep like holes and cracks in this thing, and I couldn't get it. Now I could have maybe hit it with an air hose and blown some of that stuff out. That's not a bad way to go. The problem is I don't want to have to drag an air compressor outside of my shop. It's just a little bit of a hassle. So I didn't do that on this one, but no big deal. I'll just kind of scrape off the tops. Maybe worst case scenario, you know, grab a Dremel and kind of abrade some of this off. But everything should be fine. It's much better than I think it would have been had I just taken it out and stuck it in the oven. Another thing that I noticed is I think that I had my oven set a little bit higher than normal. It's an analog dial, and my thermostat, I have a little temperature gauge in there. It looked like it was at the temperature that I wanted, but where I put the actual piece of wood, it was a little bit hotter. So anyway, got a little bit more work to do, but it's not a big deal. Just something to kind of remember, keep in mind that, you know, you don't always necessarily get it perfect and have no work to do cleaning stuff off, even if you dry everything off really well. So anyway, now the next step is we need to cast this, and the way things are working, I'm actually going to be casting this on the live stream before this video goes up. It's going to be kind of an awkward thing. So I'll put a link to the live stream replay if you want to see this being cast. I'm doing that in a couple days here on Friday, so when this video comes out, it'll be a couple days ago is when I cast this. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing this thing get stabilized. I know it was kind of a no-frills video. There wasn't anything new and exciting about the stabilizing process necessarily, but I did kind of cover a lot of the steps. I mean, these are just the standard steps that I use, but I covered them in a little bit more detail, so hopefully that was useful. But the only difference was it was a big piece of wood and I used a big chamber, which I don't usually do. I like the Turntex chambers for what I typically stabilize. But I'll have links to all the equipment and stuff if this is something that you want to get into. I'll leave those down in the show notes. Anyway, I hope that it was at least fun to see. So I'll have a link to the video or the live stream replay where I cast this. Again, according to you guys seeing this video, I've already done that on the live stream. So I'll have a link to that so you can see how this thing turns out. Hopefully I do good. But anyway, if this is your first time on my channel, we do all kinds of resin casting projects, tips and tricks, and experiments around here, and stabilizing, of course. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the little notification bell so you get notified when new videos get posted, as well as when I go live. And if you're thinking about getting into resin casting, but you're not really sure where to begin, you want to kind of get the lay of the land, check out my ebook, The Beginner's Guide to Resin Casting. I wrote it to kind of answer those questions, give you that base knowledge of, you know, how does this actually work? What do I need to get started? And what do I need to think about when I'm doing this? It's not going to answer, you know, how to make hybrid blanks or specific techniques or anything like that. It's going to just kind of give you the lay of the land. And I find that to be the most useful information for beginners personally. So if that sounds like something you'd like to pick up, it's available on my website. So you can do that now. I'll have a link down in the show notes and on the screen here. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching this video and happy casting.